Hello, welcome to this webinar on Citavi. Thank you all for joining me this afternoon. If I could just double check really quick, can you hear me? If you can, could you please write in the chat if the volume is good or if it's too quiet or too loud? Can anyone hear me at all? Okay, great. Good. Then I'll get started. My name is Jennifer Schultz, and I'm going to show you what Citavi is and what benefit it can have for your university community. And we'll take a look first at a few PowerPoint slides just on what exactly Citavi is. And then we'll do a demonstration of the program that shows the features in action. And we'll have some time at the end for your questions. So throughout the presentation, if you think of any question at all, please write it in the chat area. And then the last 10 or 15 minutes, we will look at some of these questions then in depth, and I can answer those. Okay, so first of all, what is Citavi? Citavi is an academic productivity tool that reduces busy work, promotes academic rigor, and drives better thinking, and thus enables researchers and students to deliver better research. And we'll take a look at exactly how it does that later on, but just in general, if you can think of it as a tool that makes the research process easier. And for the university as a whole, Citavi promotes the academic excellence of your institution by bringing rigor to the research process, increasing research quality and productivity, and driving student satisfaction because it gives students an easy workflow to follow when they're new to the research process. And whenever I say research process, I just mean the paper writing process. So whenever you're in a program at the university, you'll be writing different papers, or if you're a more advanced scholar, you'll be submitting journal article submissions and writing books and those kinds of things. And then, of course, it helps students and researchers prevent plagiarism. And of course, that is good for the university as well, because no university wants a plagiarism scandal. Citavi has been around for about 10 years now. It started in Switzerland and is the market leader in the German-speaking world. So about 90% of all German students at research universities can now use Citavi through a site license. So what does Citavi do exactly? It supports students and faculty, researchers in writing papers and in writing books in almost any kind of project that they would be working on. So it helps in the search for sources. So at the beginning of the research process, when you're looking for different sources and different topics. It helps with content analysis. So when you take a source and then you're reading it and trying to pull the information out of it that would be useful for your own work. And it helps you structure all of this information that you're gathering and bring it into a nice outline for a paper. And then you can take that outline and all of that information you've gathered and bring that over to Word and start writing your paper. And so it makes the writing process a lot easier because you won't have to think of everything from scratch. You've already organized all your ideas in Citavi, and then you bring them over to Word. So it gives students and academics in general a nice workflow for organizing all of their projects. And in addition, one thing I forgot, you can work in a team and you can plan tasks. So those are common features that work across all of these different steps. There are other programs out there that help you manage your sources. So they're called reference management programs. So you might have heard of EndNote, RefWorks, Mendeley, or Zotero. And what these programs do is they let you bring in source information and then output it in a certain citation style. And Citavi does that as well, but it goes beyond that to do so much more and really support students in every step of the research process, not just information in, information out, but really how you think about the information you're collecting. And users definitely see a benefit from Citavi. We did this poll in August of 2014, and as you can see, most students think that Citavi enables them to work more efficiently and in a more organized way, that Citavi saves them time, and that Citavi gives them greater confidence when completing research projects. And that last one is a little bit lower, but I think that's because students generally don't feel so confident when completing research projects. But Citavi can help them feel a little bit more confident. And then if students ever get stuck when using the program, or if your staff members or faculty members would ever get stuck, they can contact us for support, and we try and help within one day and try and resolve the issue within one day. So we have really good support services. We don't want any of our users to be stuck not knowing what to do, because a lot of these projects are very important to the person working on them. So if you're writing a research paper and it's due on Friday, and then you have a problem with Citavi and you don't know how to do something on Thursday, you of course want service and want to be able to get on with your work. You don't want to be impeded in that. And so we provide very good support services, and with the time difference with India, it's actually a bit of an advantage, because when it's early evening over there, we're about 3.5 hours behind here in Switzerland. So then somebody who's writing us a little bit later can still get help, since we're still in the office. So we have also, I'll just say a little bit about our licensing model. We have individual licenses and university site licenses. We also have a trial version called Citavi Free, and that lets you try out all the features in Citavi for up to 100 references. So it's not a limited version in any way, except that you can only save 100 references per project. So at the undergraduate level, this is really a good way for students to test out the program. And for most of their assignments, they wouldn't need to save more than 100 references. So at the undergraduate level, Citavi Free is really a good choice. And then as students go on, they might find that they need the full version. And so then there are individual licenses, and then the university site licenses let the whole campus community use Citavi for free. And in general, that's a very good deal, because you get support and upgrades included. And the fee is not very high for the fact that you can provide this software to all of your students, faculty, and staff. So in summary, Citavi encourages better research and drives research productivity, and it helps users avoid plagiarism. And this improves your university's reputation by letting you deliver world-class research, improve student satisfaction, and avoid the risk of reputation damage because of plagiarism. And Citavi's unique focus on the entire research process and its first-class support set it apart from other similar programs. All right, so now let's take a look at what that means in practice. I'm just going to switch over to Citavi quickly. And we'll go through then a typical workflow if you were writing a paper as a student and how you could use Citavi to do that. And so, first of all, I've started Citavi. This is what you see the first time you open Citavi. Over here on the left, you have different help options. And then that's nice to know that you can always contact us in case you have a question. So we have the Ask a Question link right here. And then over on the right, we have a news feed that gives you important information about Citavi updates. And this can also be amended so that you get RSS feeds that you're interested in. So, for example, research alerts and those kinds of things. So what I'll do now is I'm just going to start a new project. And I'm going to call this project Information Literacy in India. And you might be asking where this will be saved. This project is always saved locally on my computer. It's not saved in the cloud, so you always have control over your information. You're not uploading it to a server in the United States or somewhere else. It's always saved locally on your computer. So I'll click OK. And so Citavi creates the program. You'll notice we have this 3-column layout here and lots of options as well, which might look a little overwhelming, but we'll take a look exactly at how you use the program in just a second. So over on the list, you would have your list of references. We don't have any yet because this is a new project. In the middle, you have all the information for the reference selected in the list on the left. And over on the right, we have quick help text. And this you can find throughout the program. And it's very useful, especially for students who are really just starting out at university and don't know that much about citation. So here, if you click in a certain field, you see the information for how to enter data in that field. So in this case, an author name, that you would put the last name first, then the first name. If I click into a different field, such as periodical, it will say what that is, or the volume number, and usually there's an example as well. So this really guides students as they're entering information on their sources. So if you're adding an item by hand, you would go through and just enter the information in all these fields. But a lot of times, if you have books and journal articles already, you can import that information automatically into Citavi. And to give you an example, if I have a book, I can click on this ISBN DOI PMID button at the top, and then I would look at the back of the book where you see the barcode and enter the ISBN number for the book. And Citavi then will look up the book information in the catalogs I've selected. And right now you see over on the right that I have the British Library and Library of Congress selected. And then I can add those to my project. And then you'll see that information for the book. If I click on the Overview tab in the middle, Then I can also see the cover image if Citavi was able to download that from the library catalog. And then I have all of this book information that I will need later on when I make a reference list. So when I cite my sources in the paper, I would need this information. So you can see that goes a lot faster than if I had to enter all of this by hand, which is the way you would typically do it otherwise. And the same thing works for journal articles. So I can go here to the File menu and then click Import. And then we can import a folder of PDF files, or a single file, but in this case I'll select folder. And so this would be if you had some journal articles that maybe your professor sent you, if you're a student. And then you can import those all at once. And I'll click Next here. And just like how a book has an ISBN number, journal articles have what's called a DOI. And this is the same thing in principle. It's a unique identifier that Citavi can use to look up the information in the article, so all the information that would be necessary for citation later on. So I'll add that to my project and click OK. And then if we click through here, we see all this reference information in the middle. And I can even look at these PDF articles over here on the right in the preview pane. So this right-hand pane has the quick help and a preview for PDF articles and for web pages and other files. So we'll open that in the preview. And then if I wanted, I could go through and start reading that article, which we'll take a look at in a little bit. So right now, I just wanted to show you where you can view that. So that's how you would add information that you already have to Citavi. And then if you want to look for additional sources, because of course when you're writing a paper, you'll need a few other sources as well. You usually won't already have everything. Then you can do so in a number of ways. So in Citavi, there's the online search, and this lets you search in library catalogs and databases that your university has subscribed to. So, for example, I could add the University of Oxford catalog and enter my search term. And I can narrow that down by year, author, or title. There's also an advanced search that lets you fill in fields specific to the catalog and use different operators and parentheses. So you can create a really advanced search. But I'll just use the simple search for now. And then you see that Citavi finds these different items. And I can go through and check the information on each work, or I can just add all of them to my project at once. Because maybe I'm in a hurry, I don't really feel like evaluating all of these right now, so I'll just go ahead and add my search results to my project. And then maybe at a later date, I would want to go back and double check if these sources are really relevant for my paper. So what I could do is I can select all of these references I just imported, and I know right now that I'm in a selection because down at the bottom you see this yellow bar. So I will select all of these references and then say Add Task. And I can say Examine and Assess, and maybe I want to do that tomorrow. And I can give that a task importance level as well, and then click OK. So that's usually what we would recommend then after an import, that you decide what you want to do with the sources that you've just brought into your project. So I'll cancel this selection now. And let's take a look at how we would import references from outside of Citavi. So if I open up an online database page, and this works also with EBSCO databases or Wilson databases, so the typical ones that your university would have a subscription to. So I'll perform my search. And then for the items that I find interesting, I can place a check mark next to them. And then I can export these citations to my Citavi project. And over on the right, you'll see there's a way to add all of these checked items to a list. And then once I've done that, I can click this Save Print Email Download link. And depending on the database, this might all look a little bit different, but the steps are usually the same. So you might have an export option rather than Save Print Email Download, but it'll have the same result. And so then here, I can take those references I found, and I can say I want to export either the citation or the citation in abstract. And I want to download those to my citation manager. So the option that you'll typically see is export to a reference management program or simply export. Here it's called download to citation manager. And then I can choose any of the formats on the right that are either EndNote format, RIS format, or BibTeX format. All of those work. And RIS format is kind of the standard for any programs that deal with references. So I'll choose that option, and I'll choose to open that with Citavi. And it'll take a second to download. But then we can go back to our Citavi project, and you'll see this window pop open. This is very important. It just has you double check that the way the information is coming in, that all the letters look correct. Because sometimes with different alphabets and different font systems, you might have some issues with the character encoding. Usually that's not the case, but it's good to check before you import hundreds of references into your project and then realize that they all look a bit funny. So we'll click Next here because everything looked fine, and then it also just has you check that the author names are in the right order, and that's the case here as well. You only have to do that the first time that you import from an online source. So we'll add those to our project, and then you can see again here I have that reference information in the middle column. So that's how you would import from an online database, but sometimes students will also be using web pages as well in their research. And for example, if I have this news page here that I want to add, I can use a tool that Citavi provides called the Citavi Picker. And the Citavi Picker is just a web browser extension for Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, and Internet Explorer. And with it, you can right-click anywhere on a web page and then point to Citavi Picker, and then choose Add Web Page as Reference. And when we go back to the Citavi project, we'll see not a whole lot of information for the page, but we do see some basic information. Why doesn't this come in as well as it does when you have, for example, a journal article like this? Well, the reason is that web pages usually don't have as much metadata as databases have or library catalogs. So, and it's often not in as structured a format. So Citavi can't interpret all the metadata, or there just isn't enough. And so what you can do in such cases is you can copy things like the author names from the preview pane, and then it's just a little bit easier than having to retype everything or having to have a separate browser window open. And Citavi has a nice feature here in the author field too, where you can paste the name in the right order. So I'll do that. Oops. No. Yeah, and this preview pane over on the right is basically a browser window. So if the web page is having difficulties, then then it won't appear. Let's see if we can get it to work. No, it's still experiencing difficulties. That's a good point, though, because what you can do to make sure that you always have the web information that you want to cite is you can save a website as a PDF. And that's very useful if you're doing a paper on a topic that's controversial, or that uses sites where the content tends to be edited or changed quickly. Then you can make this PDF copy of the website as it was on the day that you read it, and then if there's ever any question as to what you cited, then you can point to this and say, no, well, you know, the website doesn't look this way anymore, but the day that I was reading it and that I found this quotation, it was like this. And then you have the PDF, which is kind of like a photograph of that web page at the time. And it's also useful for for when the server has difficulties, like it is right now here. So just to recap, we've looked at now how you can import items into your project that you already have. So if you have books on your desk, you can search by ISBN number. And if you have articles in PDF format, you can import those, and Citavi will find all the information. And then if you're searching for new sources, you can use the online search and search, for example, in your library catalog or in a database. Just as a side note, if your catalog meets the necessary technical requirements, we can add it to Citavi, and then your students can search the university library catalog from within the program. And that's quite helpful because then they would also have the shelf numbers for the books in the library. So we looked at how you can search from within Citavi, and then also how you can search an online database or add web pages. And why is all this important? Why do all of this work and gather all of your sources for a paper in Citavi and have all of this information that you see in the middle? What's the point? So when you're citing works in a paper, at the end you'll have to provide a list of references. And when you have all of your bibliographic information in Citavi, you can really easily create a project bibliography in the citation style of your choice. And so in this case, this is just our house style, but we have over 4,500 citation styles in Citavi. So if you're using the Harvard method of citation, you can almost always find a style that will match your requirements. Or if you're using a footnote style, we have a lot of those as well. And then you can just, with one click, create this list of references in the style of your choice, and then you wouldn't have to pay attention to all the periods and commas and how you abbreviate pages, for example, how you format issue numbers. Citavi will do all of that for you so you can ensure consistency. Of course, this works best if the information that you've input into your project is good. So in some cases, like here, you would notice this isn't a full reference. You'd want to go back and double check that you've added all the information to your project. But then generally, everything should be the way that you would want it to be when you submit a paper to your professor. So we've spent a lot of time now looking at the reference management part of the program. And that you might be familiar with if you know some of the other programs like EndNote or Reference Manager, or Zotero, or Mendeley. Basically, all of those kinds of programs can do that. And Citavi goes a step beyond in that it offers you text analysis tools as well. So instead of just looking at citation information, you're also looking at actual information and ideas in Citavi. And one way to do that is to read directly in the program. So if I have a PDF article, I can display it over here on the right in the preview pane, and I can make this a little bit bigger then, so I can actually start going through and reading it. And Citavi gives me a few annotation tools, so I can use a highlighter and go through and say, okay, these are some of the things that make up the information society. Oops. And I can go through and highlight. If I decide that there's something I know I want to cite later on in my paper as a direct quotation, I can change this highlighted part to a direct quotation. And Citavi will bring that information into a direct quotation over here, and I can create a rephrasing of the main idea here. So, oops, list of information society characteristics. And I can enter the page range. Once you've entered the page range once, Citavi will remember where that is exactly. And then, of course, you'd want to add your quotation marks. You might want to change the layout a little bit too. And then you can add categories if you would like. And so the categories then would be a heading in your outline for a paper. So if you want to mention this information in an introduction to your paper, you might want to add this to the category introduction. And I'm just creating these categories as I go along. And Let's see if we can find an image in this one. Probably not. If you find an image in a paper as well, you can add that. We have an image tool that lets you select an area of the page and then save that as an image quotation. And then otherwise, you can just go through and select the information that's useful to you. Let's see, what do we have? So something like that. And you see here then that the page numbers have been added automatically. And so this I might want in a new category. And as I add all this information, it's saved near the reference. So in the middle here, if we go back to our main view, you can see I have the reference selected, and then the quotations are appearing here. But they're also appearing in the knowledge organizer. And thus far, we were just in the reference editor. I'll click back there just so you can see. So far, we've only been in the reference editor part of the program, but there's also the knowledge section and the tasks. So before we added those tasks, those are now appearing here. So you get a nice overview of all the different tasks you have to do. And then here in the knowledge organizer, we see the 2 quotations we just added, and we see the beginning of this outline where we added those 2 categories. So why do all this work, and when you're reading, go through and excerpt the pieces of information that interest you? Well, to answer that, I will go to a different project, and that's actually our sample project, which you can access in Citavi from the welcome screen. So that link is always at the bottom. When you first start Citavi, that link will be up here. And here, when we go to the knowledge organizer, well, first you can see I have 96 references in this project, so it's a little bit bigger. And then I can go to the knowledge organizer here, and you'll see a lot more information. So in the middle, you'll see all of the different quotations I have. This is a multilingual project, so you'll see some German knowledge items in there as well. And over on the right, then you can see a preview of the knowledge items. So this, for example, is an image that was taken from a journal article. And then I have my direct quotations, like the one we just added. And they always have this restatement of the main idea, which in Citavi is called a core statement. So that helps you sort all of these different pieces of information. And I can go into a certain category, for example, information literacy, and then I'll see just the items, the knowledge items that I added to that category. And if I want, I can select 2 at a time and compare them over here on the right in the preview. I can use subheadings. I can move these around. If I want to change my category system over here on the right, that's easy to do. I can, I can add subcategories. I can add subcategories quite a ways down. Things like that. And so as I work on my project, I will start making more and more connections between the things that I'm reading, and I can bring those into this structure here. So, if we click over here, we see this reference here. And the reason that this is very useful is that when I then want to start writing a paper, I can take this outline and all of these pieces of information. So what we saw right at the beginning here under all. And this information includes not only images and not only direct quotations, but it also includes my own ideas. So so I can do that the same way I would a quotation, where I have my idea, and then I can say, something like that for my core statement, and I can add that to a category as well. So maybe I would like to have that in my definition section, and then I can click OK. So you have all of these pieces of information, you have your own ideas, and you've brought them into this structure. And what you can then do to begin writing a paper is you can open up Word, and this is just an example student paper. And then I can combine this paper with my project because Citavi has something called the Word add-in. And I can go up here then to the Citavi tab in Word and then click Citavi pane. And then I can choose my project. And then as I'm writing my paper, I can double click to insert a reference. So let's see, we'll insert this one. And then that reference is formatted in the citation style I've selected. Right now I'm using our house style, but I can change that to, for example, the APA style. Oh, and we have over 6,000 styles, not over 4,000 styles. We keep adding styles, so there are quite a few. So you'll notice that when I changed that style to APA, this date format changed. And also down here, the reference list now has references as a heading instead of publication, bibliography, and then the full date here. So it's very easy then to change the formatting according to the citation style you're using. And Citavi takes care of everything for you. You don't have to worry about all of this information down at the bottom. Citavi does that all for you. But what is a really nice feature is that in addition to adding citations, you can of course add the quotations that you've gathered as well. So let me find one of our definitions. So I'd be writing my paragraph, and then I might decide I want to insert a quotation. And I can double click to insert that quotation, and then that will be entered into the paper along with the citation information. You'll notice that I have quite a number of knowledge items over here and quite a number of references on the left. And if you're working on a larger project, this can quickly get a bit overwhelming. So one really nice feature that Citavi offers is it lets you import the outline you created in Citavi along with all the pieces of information that you categorized. And to do that, you can right-click a category and then choose to insert all the categories. And you can include the knowledge items as well. And when you do that, when we show that usually in a session, students will say, oh, well, then Citavi writes my paper for me. And that's not really the case. I mean, it will enter your outline with all of the different pieces of information you save. But of course, you would still need to connect that information and write a paper that doesn't just sound like one quotation after another quotation. So usually what we recommend doing instead is to enter all of the categories into your paper. And Citavi adds these as word headings. And then what you can do is click into a particular section. So I've placed my cursor here, and then I can go to the chapter view, and then I see all of my knowledge items and all of my references that I've added to that particular category. So I could insert my idea that I had saved. I can choose to insert this with the restatement of the idea with that heading. Or not. I can use these insert advanced options. And of course, for the book sources, I can just add a very simple citation like that. But then if we go to a different section, for example, information literacy, you'll see I have all of this information here. So these different quotations, which I can insert by double-clicking. And then they're added with the citation information. And I see over here on the left that I've added those items already. So that other one that's checked is the one we added up here as an example. So Citavi lets me know what I've used and in general just what is part of this category. So in this case, the information literacy category. And then everything you add to the paper has a bibliography entry at the end. And so it really saves time with all of the citation formatting that you need when you create an academic paper. And it also helps you stay really organized with this chapter view. So you're always only looking at what you need for a particular section. So especially for students who might be writing a research paper for the first time, this is really helpful because a lot of students struggle with the blank page and they don't know what exactly to say. And if they've done a lot of this work already in Citavi and made the connections between different ideas in Citavi, then it's a lot less difficult because they can just bring all of that information over to their Word document and they see, oh, okay, so these are the pieces of information I have. Now I just kind of need to connect them and bring them into a narrative structure. Yeah, so I guess I better stop before we get to the questions. So that is then generally an overview of the main features in Citavi. There are a lot of other ones as well, but I guess if there's anything you take away from this session, it's just that Citavi then is a program that lets you go through all steps of the research process in an organized way. And it really helps you save time and focus on the content of your research and not have to do all of the busy work that you normally would have to do when writing a paper. So thank you very much for your attention. And if anyone has any questions, I don't see any yet in the chat. So please do type some questions, and I'm happy to answer them. Or Rajesh, if you have any questions that you can think of that I might have forgotten to mention during the presentation. Hopefully everyone can still hear me and I'm not just talking to myself over here. Oh, okay. And Rajesh has just written that he has no questions. Okay, that's good as well. It can be a little overwhelming because Citavi has a lot of features, and when you first look at the program, there are so many different options, but the basics are pretty quick to master, and most of the time you won't need these advanced features unless there's something very specific that you want to do. So really, the import of information and the adding of information is quite easy, and then working with your sources in Citavi and saving ideas and quotations, that's also quite easy, and we see that students master that quite fast. Okay, last chance for questions. Any questions at all? If you do think of something afterwards, you can email Rajesh and he can pass it on to me as well. I'm happy to answer any questions by email or by telephone later on. Okay. It looks like there are no questions this time. So if you do think of anything afterwards, please just send a message to Rajesh. And thank you very much for your attention. And I hope that it was interesting for you to learn a little bit about Citavi and what it can do. And thank you again for, for taking the time this afternoon. And have a very nice rest of your day. Oh, for anyone who's still there, it looks like there is a question that came in. Let me see. So the person who had the question, if you could go ahead. I can't see the question yet, so I'm not sure if there's a way to see that. One moment, please, for the person who had the question. Hmm. So I'm having a bit of trouble with the chat, but I'm not seeing the question right now. Um, okay. Never mind. Rajesh just wrote that there was no question that he guesses. So if you think of something later on and would like me to answer the question, please do write. I'm really happy to do so. I don't want anyone to feel confused or think, oh, there was something I wanted to know about Citavi, but you didn't cover it. So please do just write me a message or write Rajesh a message after this presentation.